Hello, St. Ignatius High School community. Welcome back for another edition of Cannonball Moments from St. Ignatius Podcast. I'm Garen Distelhorst from the class of 1996, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Plan Giving here at St. Ignatius. Today, our guest is Matt Warzel from the class of 1999. Matt is a certified resume writing expert with over 20 years of experience in human resources and career advancement techniques. He's the president of MJW Careers and provides assistance to companies in transition, as well as to individual job seekers needing to advance their careers. Being just after the New Year's holiday, I thought Matt might provide some sage advice for those of you whose resolution included looking for a career change. So Matt, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure, Garen, and thank you for the opportunity. And hopefully can help some Wildcats out there with the career transitions. I know January is a busy month for a lot of folks to kind of start the engagement process and exploratory process of like, what am I going to do next and how's this year going to shake out? So hopefully a couple nuggets will be shared.
Yeah, I look forward to those. First, we always like to talk a little bit about your St. Ignatius experience and how you ended up there. So if you're cool with it, let's go back a couple decades to middle school and just tell us a little bit about, how did you learn about St. Ignatius and how you ended up choosing St. Ignatius for your high school experience.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Yeah, this will be wild. So essentially, I grew up in Brunswick, Ohio. I was alum of St. Ambrose. And at the time, one of my good buddies, Doug Gizzy, his brother, Chris Gizzy, played for the 92 team, I believe. And so we grew up pretty much just like really into football, and that's Northeast Ohio in general, right? So and we started going to games and essentially just kind of I latched on to Doug and was like, yeah, this would be pretty cool to play like what your brother does at this school, and we didn't understand the idea of Ignatius at the time, but then we kind of started, as you get further down the pathway of your junior high career, your football career, you start to really think, okay, we want to play football in high school, right? You start taking it a little more serious, and that's all I want to do was play for Ignatius at that time. Just again, influence, younger friend, and then it kind of spawned into this thing of like, this is what I want to do now, right? So, what's funny is, I was always the guy kind of going for the laughs in school, so I was always kind of missing extracurricular activities, kind of looking out the window, kind of thing. Constantly, pretty much. And so I remember, my principal would say, you're not going to get Ignatius because, look at your back of your report card. Because I was AB, so like I never even got C's really. I was a really good student. I knew when to take it serious. And, again, I knew how to push the envelope, which, I wish now it's like, it didn't do anything for me. But it's like, man, back then I was going to be on Saturday Night Live. I was just prepping. And she's like, you're not going to get in with these checks. And so I remember that was like my first like, oh yeah, well, we'll see about that, and of course I don't know if it didn't really do much to Carl Ergel and the team. So it didn't pan out the way she probably was hoping. Cause of course I drove her nuts. So she's probably like, I hope this kid doesn't go anywhere. And then I played football for St. Ambrose. I remember my line coach was like, you're not going to play football for Ignatius. And I was like, oh yeah. So I kind of had these people that were crappy influencers for, being 12. It's like, oh great, these are my people influencing me. Like, you guys are worthless. Essentially, but it motivated me. So, and what's nice is they don't cut you at Ignatius. You just got to be able to run. And I could handle that. Even being hefty, I was able to kind of keep up with running. So, luckily, 4 years later, I had a career there and would never change it for anything. It was amazing at Ignatius playing ball, but that was kind of essentially how it all transpired, was because of Chris Gizzy going there. And then, of course, the other motivators in the background kind of chirping at me. And I'm like, well, I'll show you guys.
That's awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about your time at Ignatius. It sounds like you played some football. Who were your big influences? Did you have any other extracurriculars you were involved with, or favorite classes or teachers?
My favorite, I would say senior year math with Flandera. So that was probably, and like we used to lay on the floor, like just when he would come in, me and Arthur would be laying on the floor. He's like, well, you guys get up. So it was always just fun because he just didn't care either. So he would just let us go with these bits every day. And now I look back as a 40-year-old and I'm like, God, we were so annoying. But to me and to like, just us, it was kind of like a platform for us to have a little comedy. So I thought Flandera was cool because he was always just like, whatever. Um, I did. I had some really cool classes where, like a lot of the theological classes were pretty neat, made you think a lot more than just, what's the angle on this shape and stuff like that. So I always appreciated that they would explore the spirituality stuff there. I thought, that was really neat. I'm a spiritual kind of guy. So I thought the film and TV one was probably the most memorable. You're watching School Ties is like, a week of class. So it was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So I really appreciated that stuff. I would say, who was mentor? We always looked up to the older football players, right? So like Dan O'Leary was in our school when I was a freshman. I was always kind of like, my friends would make fun of me, like, there's O'Leary, and I'm like, oh yeah, because we had known all these famous players, right, from watching these Wildcat videos, and so it was neat seeing them live, and we were fanboys, a couple of us, so it was kind of wild. But in terms of like really helping me change a mindset, probably Marty Einen. And he kind of kicked my butt, not only like pretty much since sophomore year, but like between junior and senior year, he really kind of got my mindset changed, saying like, hey man, take this serious because you're trying to prep these guys. And I went on to end up being like a scout team captain that year, and it really kind of got my kind of let my colors fly at that point. So I would say that was a big influence. It was just Marty kicking my butt going, you could be funny, but know the time and place.
How about college? Where did you end up going to college? Maybe briefly tell us, something about what you studied, and then how'd you wind up, maybe with your first job or ultimately in the human resources field?
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I went to John Carroll. I was in love and majored in marketing. Because again, I knew I was going to be in business at that time. I kind of thought it was just a fallback. Well, I could talk to people, so maybe I'll get into sales or marketing. And at that point, I really wanted to get into copywriting and advertising. I started building this portfolio in college and would shop it around in interviews, and no one's hiring me. Even to get in an entry level role, I thought, wow, advertising is a tough nut to crack. So I just started throwing the proverbial applications everywhere, and got a sales job in paper. It was a base, and I was like, cool, first time out of school with a gig. Well, I really appreciate it. And I worked hard, but what happens to paper, right? This is like 2003, I think. So like, paper's already on the way out. And so I got laid off, and I remember being devastated and crying and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my life's over. My first job, and I'm already out. And Joelle, her name was, she was a friend of mine at college. She was working at Aerotech, and Aerotech's guy who started the guy who owns the Ravens started it, Steve Bisciotti. And it's a staffing firm. And so I remember she's like, yeah, we're always looking for people, and it's a base plus commission. I was like, sweet. That was like the big thing in Cleveland. If you're entry level, you had to get base and commission. But needless to say, though, it was great because I got business acumen. The way they set up their business there, if anybody out there is early career and looking to do something in the world and they don't know what to do yet, recruiting's a neat little area of the business world. And it's hard, but it's very rewarding. And if you're going to try to learn recruiting, go to Aerotech. They are stomping ground for like how to be a business person. And boy, was that great. My first manager was amazing. And there a few years, and got into HR then through an interview, because staffing, right? You're pretty much like, our clients are the GM, Ford, Chryslers, around town. Whereas now I'm going to be working at Goodrich Landing Gear in Cleveland. So now my customers are my managers in-house. So it's completely different style of recruiting, which I actually like better. I like the HR side better.
So then somewhere along the line, you were inspired to start your own company. How did that come about? MJW Careers. When did you start that?
Yeah, thank you. So I was out in LA. I got relocated. We were in Cleveland until 2007, my wife and I, and then I was going to go to LA and start learning comedy and writing. And I was doing stand-up around town in Cleveland at that time. And now it was my big break to go to LA, right? I'm gonna get there. The plane's gonna arrive, and all these agents and filmmakers are gonna be just waiting for me to get off and give me the velvet ropes, which none of that happened. And John's Controls, luckily, they were just like, yeah, they needed a recruiter bad, and I figured out a way to wow them during the interview. So they gave me a relo, moved across a country, stayed there until the '08 collapse. And then I was laid off early '09, which, yeah, that happens in recruiting. You're pretty much first one out with advertising. At that point, I was just down and out, man. I had anxiety, and which ended up spurring off like a 4-year battle. But that was like the beginnings, and where I was just like, I was 100 pounds heavier, and I wasn't going to church anymore. It was just literally work all day, then at night do acting stuff and writing and filming. So it was just work, and neglected me and things. And my wife was doing the same. She was working 2 different things too. So I got laid off, and then she got laid off 2 months later. And I was like, babe, we gotta get back east. And so we just went back east, wound up in North Carolina through a friend that was I grew up with, which I'll never regret. I love being down here. But yeah, that was like, I was like, well, crap, I got to figure out my life, and that was like the hard part. So on a whim, I just started advertising resumes, because I had been writing resumes anyway. And I thought, well, I'll just start advertising this and see. And I started getting $50 here, $75 there, and using that unemployment I had to kind of prop us up for a little bit. And eventually I started taking this business thing a little serious by the end of '09 into 2010. And then, obviously 12, 13 years later, it's still going. So it's something I'll never not do. I love being an entrepreneur now. I never thought I would wind up like this, but now that I, have it, it's constantly a game though of sales, right? And marketing and lead generation. So you're always playing catch up. It's not like you're just doing God's work and helping people transition all day. There's, a bunch of different hats, but pretty much out of necessity, I just built a company.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. So let's transition the conversation a little bit more towards career coaching. Let's start at the 101 level. First question on this topic is, what are some essential items that job seekers should include on the resume or their curriculum vitae? Or vitae?
Excellent. Right. Excellent. Yeah. So the basic 101 type stuff. First, less is more. And the less needs to be the most impactful stuff. I put my content in 3 buckets. And if it doesn't go in these buckets, I don't keep it on the resume. One are what's relatable. So I'm going to look at a job description and of a job I really want to do. And I'm going to highlight stuff I can do on it. And then I'm going to underline stuff I can't. The stuff I can do, I'm going to reverse engineer that into the resume. Now, you don't just copy and paste it, right? You make it your own, though. You take it next level. Yes, I can do this particular responsibility. And in fact, here's a little quick anecdote of one I had done before, a project success I had before that relates to that type of work. The key is, though, building it into a resume-esque statement. And that's where you hire people like me, where it's very business-minded, but it's quick, concise, action, reaction. You're giving the resume to these hiring teams as a full meal, cooked, ready to eat. The interviews where you talk about the ingredients, they don't have time to hear the ingredients on the resume. So keep it less. Give me this macro level thinking of what this accomplishment was. Now, again, the more of these milestones, the more of these narratives touch on that job description and like directly from that stuff, the better, because now you're in the same sandbox and you're telling these hiring managers that I'm here for you in this job only. This job here is what I'm going to tailor my resume to, essentially. They love that. It's better than them trying to figure out what skills you have based off of a mishmash of stuff you're just going to throw on there and hope they can decipher what you can do. No, you want to tell them, yeah, I'm good at it, and here's why. That'd be the first one. That's the big bucket. Then the next one's going to be operational metrics. Give me some scope, sales, percentages, anything that has to do with efficiency, productivity, profitability. Again, what makes this business engine run, whatever company you're at. Figure out what are your responsibilities. Now, if you don't have metrics, that's okay, because you can still operationalize the text. Drove some sales by doing blah, 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 blah. So keep it simple, but also mindful of the bottom line. They like that you care about money, because we should all care about money and time and efficient, all this kind of stuff when you're a professional employee. Now, that's the second bucket. And the third one's anything unique. So unique could be like speeches, awards, and like high profile clients, stuff like that. So that's the first part of a resume. Is the content is king, and the content must relate to the people that you're trying to attract. Skills. We're in a buzzword game now because we're using things called applicant tracking systems. And these things were around when I was recruiting in the 2000s, but they weren't as sophisticated. And they don't, nowadays you don't know what companies are using what rules and what software, et cetera. So you got to be very pragmatic with the way you set up your resume in terms of the visual, but also the keyword optimization. Visual, because it's got to hit the human eyeballs eventually, hopefully, and it's got to look good, but you don't want it too complex for the machines because the robots are trying to parse this stuff, this information. So you can't have text boxes and you can't have graphs and charts and pictures and all this stuff. You can have one like that. We call them an infographic, but save that for an addendum when you're applying online. Do you have any other additional documents? Yeah, here's my infographic. Save it for the emails right here. Add it as another attachment. So, but your main resume should just be very professional looking. Content's the king. So that's the first with the aesthetics. That'll help clear the ATS, so to speak, but also, again, it looks good for the humans. And then, like I mentioned, keywords is the second part of the ATS compliance stuff. You got to have the right keywords because as recruiters, what I'm doing is going on a job description the hiring manager gave me, and I'm going to look and see what kind of keywords are very unique on this job description, maybe a piece of software or a process. And then I'm going to go on my search and I'm going to start putting in those words, right? So you got to have those words on your resume so you're being found. The more you can relate again to that job description in terms of those buzzwords, a lot more visibility boost for you. You'll get found sooner. So there's a little bit of a game there too. Now, don't just put words in there to put them in there. Have intention. And make sure that and don't fib, right? Rule number one, don't fib. But the more you can sprinkle around too, again, just plays more into that algorithm with the results and all that stuff. So you got to kind of play that search game. So that's the reason why the aesthetics, skills, content, and then anything else that's kind of like education, certification stuff, you can put that at the bottom. That's fine. If you are someone who only has certification, education that relates to that job you want to do, then you can put it at the top. I always like to have a summary. A summary is your first thing you see after your name and contact information. The summary is a way to sell you. It's your key value offerings. It's not a snapshot like the old days. Hey, I'm Garen, 20 years in PR. I'm good at branding and communications and marketing. Cool. No, like we give me something, Garen. I can tell you've been doing this 10 years by looking at your work history, excuse me. What I need to know is why are you valuable to me and why should I pay Garen every 2 weeks to do my PR work and not the 3 people behind him interviewing? And so you want Garen to separate themselves as this PR guru right away. And so you've got to get creative with the way you're selling your brand in that summary. Good summaries are very vivid. They're very kind of, they grab the reader, right? So it's like a book almost in terms of like that first page, that idea, or like a screenplay. Keep that in mind. You want it short, concise, few sentences, but it's not a snapshot and a skills dump of like why you're a good candidate. This is you selling. This is your pitch. This is like your little sales. Like I say, it's called your key value offering statement is how I say them. So think about what's their biggest pains on the other side that they have because of this opening, and how are you that Tylenol? If you can kind of get that idea into that summary, it'll make for a good introduction. But and that's pretty much it. So summary, skills, experience, education, certification.
Awesome. I mean, that's great stuff. So trying to think about someone looking for a job, they're got 10 or 15 different positions that are open, they're applying for. How much of that resume are they actually changing or altering, tailoring for each job opening? Is it just that top part, or is it reconstructing the entire thing every time?
Just the top half. I would say you can leave the experience as is. I would alter, and what I do is a combinational resume. So let me throw one more thing at you without confusing it. Like essentially after the skills, before the experience, I also will have a accomplishment section, quick and concise, maybe a few bullet points, 3 to 5. Those are your heavy hitting bullet points. Those are the ones that are telling the hiring team, again, this is my all-star 5 things I've done that is going to just really get them going. With that being said, change that summary, change those skills, and change that accomplishment section to fit the job, and then move on. You can start to also build, I don't want to say a general resume, but if you're going to be a product manager, maybe have a nice product management resume, and then all you got to do is kind of add to it as you're seeing job descriptions, right? Because most stuff is going to almost be, hey, you got to be agile, or you got to be able to, manage, go-to-market strategies or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. You can't, how many times are you going to talk about GTM, right? So get the point across, make it unique to yourself, and then just don't worry about it because now it's already in there. The biggest thing again with trying to tailor the resume without making yourself nuts is is try to figure out, are there a ton of similarities between all these job descriptions? Well, then maybe get all those into that base resume, and then any this phone ringing, and any one-off nuanced stuff that comes your way throughout these other job descriptions, just start to kind of, again, either build those in there or go upskill and get that stuff so you could put it on the resume. That was the other thing I was going to say with the job description when I was mentioning underlying stuff you don't have. That's for you to go upskill, go find a way to get that stuff under your belt.
So do you recommend, is a 1-page still the best way to go, or is it okay to have a 2-page resume?
Yeah, no rule of thumb. There's no those are the old days where we were in lobbies with staplers on our resumes and sitting in the briefcase. Those days are gone. So no one cares about the length pages. Now I will say, if it's everyone's scrolling, right? So if we're scrolling, they don't want to do that either. Get to the point. But I always say, if you have page 2, it better not be boring, and there better be good stuff that you just couldn't get it on the page 1. My rule of thumb is, if you're early career, okay, why do you have 2 pages, right? You haven't been doing it that long. But maybe you have a ton of projects and volunteer stuff. Okay, well, then that dictates the second page, right? Because now you've just been such a go-getter. If you're a person that has been at GE since 1988, one career and maybe like 3 different jobs within that huge span at one company, that's probably 1 page, right? Because it's one company, not much of a job work history to work with. So you can kind of probably maneuver that into 1 page. But I've had 3 pages for CTOs, guys and girls that are in IT at the highest level. That stuff can get really complex. There's a lot of things that they're going to either want to show or at least tease, including projects and stuff, which can get really technical. So in that case, there might be a third. And then people that are like CVs, like my teachers, my research scientists, my federal people, those can be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages. So my point is, get your value shown as quickly as you can. And if you can do it on 1 page, even better, because that means your way with words.
So we've got our resume down. Let's talk a little bit about the interview process. And companies are nowadays using webcam interviews more than ever. Some probably exclusively, especially during the pandemic. Do you have any best practices or advice that you give people when they're gonna do one of these webcam interviews?
Yeah, first thing is, I always say confidence still, right? No matter what environment you're in, confidence is key. And how do you get confidence? Knowledge, right? Having understanding of the role and why you're a good fit for it. So that comes down with that whole, you got to do your research. So first and foremost, get confident. However you need to do that personally, do it, because they can tell right away, obviously, when you're not or if you're flubbing through stuff, they're going to be able to tell right away, right? So, research, why do they have the job opening, right? That's the first thing. How can we figure out how they ask the recruiter? If the recruiter doesn't know, do some Google News searches and figure out what the company's been in the news lately with. Research their website with the values page and their philosophy page. Companies love integrating a question about what do you know about their philosophies or their values. So really try to get a gauge on their culture through that stuff. That's another big part of the research, I would say. And then really just practice also hammering down some of your canned answers, like, why did you leave where? By the way, if you have some sort of like issue with why you left where, less is more. They don't need to know every single detail, and try to make it, again, from a surface level, what that excuse was. Maybe you had a bad boss, the toxicity, management change, whatever. This is stuff I coach my clients with, though, is how to get a nice canned answer so they can gloss over that question, because recruiters just want to make sure they're not raising any red flags. And so if they can get through these questions with you and doesn't make them concerned, you did your job. So, but do not overstate specific details about stuff, because it's only, I'm being honest. They don't need to know. Just keep it simple. And then like stuff like, hey, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? What's your strengths and weaknesses? Tell me about yourself. Things like that are either going to come, and if they don't, they don't, but most likely they will. Get some stuff under your belt so you don't have to worry about reinventing your answer every time. And again, though, I would just say, know your accolades that relate to that job you're interviewing for. That's going to be the biggest thing. Why can you do that work and do it well? Well, you know why. It's on your resume. Start to really memorize those projects, so then your answers can just flow from those narratives on the resume.
So I want to talk a little bit about LinkedIn. I'm not a real big LinkedIn user, use it a little bit, but as an expert, on job hunt strategies, I was looking for your opinion on LinkedIn as a job hunt tool. Do you have any strategy recommendations for how to set up your profile? I know that there's all sorts of best practices out there for how to get a LinkedIn profile that people will stumble upon, and then any kind of maybe advice for backdooring your way into an interview or a job, just utilizing the LinkedIn site.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, maximize your profile, its visibility by filling out as much as you can. LinkedIn loves people that, again, are sharing as much as they can, and it will yield some rewards for you. So first and foremost, outside of maximizing, also auto-populate, right? So whatever school's coming up when you're typing in John Carroll, click that one. That helps because it throws those results in the LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a software recruiters use. So you want to be found when they're using a software. How do you do that? Letting LinkedIn fill in as much as they can. Second, get the LinkedIn looking like your resume. You do not need to get cute, quirky, funny, fancy, ambiguous, outsmart people on LinkedIn. If I'm a recruiter, my hiring manager found you on LinkedIn and I have your resume, I don't want to see two different Garrett's. It's like, I need Garen, sorry, excuse me. I need to see the same Garen. So me and my hiring manager aren't going nuts going, who is this guy? So summary to summary, or I should say summary to the about me, plus a little bit of quirk. I like to throw the summary in, and then I'll put a couple, those key accomplishments, and then a skills list, if you will, a quick little skills list with a separator between the words. That's my about me. Experience, exactly the same as your resume. So exactly how I mentioned before. Does it relate? Is it a bottom line impact, or is it unique? I would say you could cap it at probably 10 maybe achievements under each experience section. And even then's a handful, but no more than 10. Again, people aren't going to, you want to make sure they're going to want to call you and investigate further. But yeah, I would say 10 is a good rule of thumb. In terms of backdoor, so I like to call it the iced coffee approach. So essentially you're going to you're going to message a hiring manager at a company you want to work for. Excuse me, I'm battling COVID over here. Sorry about that. First timer. I went to Myrtle Beach last weekend, figures. So essentially you're going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, I see you've been at Schneider Electric for 20 years. Wow, what great loyalty. I just one day really would have loved to work at that company. I've been a big fan of your guys' controls products for years, or whatever your relation is, right? But keep it quick. These people don't have time. And you say, hey, if it's okay, I'd love to send you maybe a $5 or $10, whatever's up to you, Amazon gift card. Maybe you could buy yourself a cup of coffee or something, or, whatever or a Starbucks card, whatever. If I could just, pick your ear a little bit about what it took for you to get to this journey and what you made you a successful employee at Schneider, or just want to bend your ear about what it takes to be a good candidate in the process when you're vetting for candidates. Cause I'd love to really, maybe wow the team over there someday with my credentials, or, hey, got this news article and it relates to your guys' products. And I figured it'd be some good knowledge for you. I'd love to connect if you ever have time sometime, whatever. But your goal is to be not pushy and not ambiguous. Again, you're direct and you have a purpose. Your goal is to get them on the horn, and they know that. And you're giving value. You're giving them a link to something that they can see or whatever. Now they may not get back to you. That's okay. You planted the seed, right? So ping them back in 6 weeks with another article, or in 3 weeks, or whatever. Just don't annoy them either. But just know that these are those seeds type stuff. And it could be as easy as just sharing an article to get the conversation rolling. Recruiters, I always say, get a good recruiter. They'll work for you for free in the background, but you could ping them on LinkedIn every, 6 weeks. Hey, Garrett, I appreciate you helping me with any job hunting, opportunities. And I just want to let you know I'm still here and still looking, and just keep it simple. Every maybe 6 weeks, we call it tickling them. That way they know you're there, but you don't need to bug them either. Or if you get an updated resume, hey, Garen, I want to tell you I got my updated resume. Wouldn't mind putting in your system. At least get you, again, talking with the recruiter, reminding them, top of mind type stuff. LinkedIn, you can also, I saw a success story where there was a job posting on LinkedIn. And with the job postings on LinkedIn, they show you the person responsible for it. So like the recruiter, the hiring manager, and they click that person, told them, hey, I saw that your job's for an SEO person. The SEO looks like they're going to be doing a lot of cleaning up. It sounds like you guys have a lot of backlinks to fix and that kind of stuff. Here, I went ahead and ran a report of all your broken backlinks as well as how to rectify them. Figured this would help, streamline the hiring process or something, whatever. And they sent it to the person and they got the job because they realized they went above and beyond, right? They actually worked a physical little problem solving project and send it to the hiring team. So just thinking of things, ways to, what's 2 hours if it means you're going to get that role at that company you really want to be at.
Great stuff. So couple questions left here. So I was doing a little research on you before our interview today, and this is off of the career advancement angle, but I was surprised to find quite a populated IMDb page. So are you still, are your toes still dipped in the water of the entertainment world, or is that in the past?
It is. No, I'm fully immersed still. I am not as hungry as I used to be in terms of getting my own opportunities. I used to just make my own way as much as I could. Now I'm putting that in my business. So now it's just my agent, which I'm blessed to have. She is a rock star. And I don't like using that term much, but she is, man. She has been with me. I got her in 2010 when I got here to Wilmington, North Carolina, and she's been with me ever since. And since then, she's got like the lead guy in FBI. Every Tuesday, Zico Zaki, he's a buddy of mine in town, but he made it, quote unquote. So she's I feel like I'm barely holding on with her because I'm like, don't lose me. Because I had not booked. I was in Bad Mom's Christmas, which is actually funny. So Bad Mom's Christmas was 5 years ago. And that was the last time I booked. Well, luckily I booked Outer Banks this year. So I'm going to be in the new Outer Banks season coming up here next month. It drops or a couple months. But so I think I kind of renewed my faith with her, and I actually got to get new headshots this month. I'm going next week. And so it's a whole thing. But funny story about Bad Moms was, so my year at high school, I graduated Kevin Hahn, and Kevin Hahn's older sister, Catherine, is like a Hollywood A-lister. And so I'm wearing a LeBron shirt after they won the championship, and I'm having fun. And then I'm like, I'm going to talk to her real quick. So I was like, Catherine, she was on her way to Bill's break. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, hey, I just got to say, I'm from Cleveland too. I went to Ignatius with Kevin. I graduated in 99 with them. We played football together. And she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I saw the LeBron shirt. I was wondering. And we ended up talking for 5 minutes. It was great. It was such a neat experience just because we had that link from Ignatius.
Yeah, that's funny. So, thanks, Matt. We always conclude the podcast by asking our guests about their own Cannonball moments. If you don't know, or for those unfamiliar with it, 500 years ago, St. Ignatius was struck in the leg by a cannonball while leading some troops, Spanish troops, at the Battle of Pamplona. And the injury took him away from the battlefield and the life he was living, and ultimately led him to devote his life to Jesus and form the Society of Jesus and so on. So kind of a tipping point moment. Any Cannonball moments? You've mentioned a few here already that may qualify, but anything you'd like to share that kind of experiences that changed the course of your life?
Well, outside the obvious, I have a son, and having him in my world was and anybody who's a father out there knows it's there's nothing like it, and I would never trade it for anything. So I would say Sam's the given one in the room. I would probably, again, that layoff. I remember I forgot who my name was. I forgot my name for a good handful of seconds. I couldn't remember my wife's name for a handful of seconds at one point. I mean, that's how my brain was just coming down on me. And it was just wow, I got to get through this. And it was, like I said, 4 years. It took a lot of changes and thinking and overthinking, etc. But that was the trigger. I remember it was February 9th, 2009 is the day I had my collapse, or essentially I call it, the breakdown, if you will. And so that day, that was my cannonball where I had to start, again, just going up this long uphill climb, but I'm better for it. And it changed me forever. So anybody who's battling mental health issues too, you're not alone. Do get some help and know that, something inside you is just trying to change. And I don't mean it like I'm not a clinician by any means. And there's a lot of people with a lot of things, in terms of relating to like, the chemicals in them. But I mean, if it's just someone like me where it's just stress related and kind of overthinking related, just know that you can get out of your head. You got to start doing some things to kind of get towards that new you. But it's well worth it if you start putting those changes in place.
Hey, Matt, if any of our listeners are looking for career advice or want to get in contact with you, seek your assistance, that kind of thing, what's the email address or whatever? What's the easiest way for somebody to touch base?
Yeah, thank you. They can go to jobstickers.com. It's like pot stickers, but job stickers. It was my gimmick from when I first started a company. I thought it was so funny. But essentially it's easier to say than my company name. So go to job stickers and that'll kind of get you into my world. If you need help with anything career transition, be glad to offer a discount for Ignatius alums or current students or anybody in the community. So just mention the podcast and I'll definitely hook you up with some goodies.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks again for joining us today. I'd like to wish you a quick recovery from COVID, and
Yes.
we're gonna take a short break here and be back to close this episode out with our Manresa Minute. So, Matt, thanks so much.
Thank you, Garen.
To close out the podcast today, we bring you our Manresa Minute. St. Ignatius is grateful to have over 300 Manresa Society members. These are benefactors who have notified the school that they have named St. Ignatius as a beneficiary in their will. While bequests left to St. Ignatius in someone's will make up the majority of our plan giving program, did you know that there are a whole slew of different creative ways that you can make an impact on St. Ignatius? Many of these giving tools allow you to make a gift far larger than you probably thought was possible. And in fact, we have an entire website devoted to educating our community about these tools. If you're interested or would like to learn more about an insurance policy, annuity, trust, or more that could impact St. Ignatius or another nonprofit, please visit www.plangiving.ignatius.edu. And that's our podcast for today. As always, thanks for listening, and go Cats.